Representing yourself? They laughed at the single dad. Then the court went silent. The gallery erupted in muffled laughter when Darius Cole stood before the judge in a wrinkled dress shirt and announced he would represent himself. No lawyer, no money, no chance. That's what their smirks said. Across the polished aisle sat his ex-wife, Mylene Price, immaculate in a tailored suit flanked by an attorney whose retainer alone could have paid Darius's rent for 6 months. On paper, Darius looked like exactly what they wanted everyone to see. A struggling repair technician living paycheck to paycheck in a cramped rental, barely holding his world together with duct tape and determination. But when the judge leaned forward and asked about his capability to provide a stable environment, Darius didn't flinch. He didn't make excuses, he just answered with a quiet honesty that made the room's temperature shift. Because sometimes the most dangerous opponent isn't the one with the expensive suit, but the one with absolutely nothing left to lose except the person they love most. If you want to see how a father with empty pockets and a full heart fights the system that's designed to crush him, stay with me until the end. Drop a like and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in courtroom 7B hummed with the same tired frequency as Darius Cole's heartbeat. He sat alone at the respondent's table, his dark brown calloused fingers tracing the edge of a yellow legal pad he'd bought at the dollar store. The pages were already filled with his cramped handwriting, notes he'd taken at 2 a.m. while Nia slept in the next room, research pulled from library computers during his lunch breaks, statutes he'd read so many times the numbers blurred together. Across the narrow aisle that might as well have been the Grand Canyon, Mylene Price sat perfectly composed. Her honey blonde hair was pulled into a flawless chignon. Her navy suit probably cost more than Darius made in a month. And beside her sat Richard Thornton, a family law attorney whose billboard Darius passed every morning on his way to work. Thornton's briefcase was the kind that whispered success when it clicked open. His watch caught the light like a promise that money could buy anything, even children. Darius's own watch was a $15 Casio with a cracked face. His dress shirt, the only one he owned, had a faint stain near the collar that he'd tried to scrub out the night before. His pants were khakis from a discount store hemmed by hand because tailoring wasn't in the budget. He looked exactly like what he was, a 34-year-old black single father who fixed broken air conditioners and clogged pipes, who counted pennies at the grocery store, who'd chosen to represent himself not out of confidence but out of necessity. The gallery behind him held maybe a dozen people, other cases waiting their turn. A court reporter who'd seen 1,000 fathers like him walk through these doors, and in the back row he could feel their eyes. The weight of judgment from strangers who'd already written his ending before the story started. The judge entered. Everyone stood. The Honorable Catherine Reeves was a woman in her late 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that had witnessed every variation of human struggle. She settled into her chair with the efficiency of someone who had 45 minutes to decide the trajectory of people's lives before moving on to the next case. Case number 2024 FC 8847, the clerk announced. Price versus Cole, petition for modification of custody arrangement. Mylene's lawyer rose smoothly, his voice carrying the practiced cadence of someone who delivered this speech 100 times before. Your Honor, Richard Thornton appearing on behalf of the petitioner, Miss Mylene Price. The judge's eyes shifted to Darius. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor a little too loudly. Darius Cole, Your Honor, representing myself. That's when he heard it. The soft snicker from somewhere in the gallery. Not loud enough to draw a rebuke, but clear enough to land like a punch to the sternum. He'd expected it. He had known from the moment he checked the box marked pro se on his response filing that he'd be walking into this room wearing a sign that said desperate and incompetent. But knowing it and feeling it were two different things. Judge Reeves glanced over her reading glasses at him. Mr. Cole, you understand that you have the right to legal representation? Yes, Your Honor. And you've chosen to waive that right. Darius's throat felt dry. I haven't waived anything. I just can't afford it. The honesty seemed to surprise her. Most people dressed it up, made excuses, blamed the system. Darius just told the truth because he'd learned years ago that the truth was the only thing that didn't require maintenance. Very well, Judge Reeves said. Mr. Thornton, please proceed with your opening statement. Thornton stood, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. He had the kind of face that belonged on motivational posters. Symmetrical, trustworthy. The face of a man who'd never missed a meal or worried about keeping the lights on. Your Honor, this case is fundamentally about what's in the best interest of the child, Thornton began. My client, Miss Price, is a dedicated mother who has always prioritized her daughter Nia's welfare above all else. 3 years ago, when she and Mr. Cole divorced, they agreed to joint custody, a decision made in good faith during a difficult time. Darius's hands curled into fists beneath the table. He remembered that good faith moment, remembered sitting in a mediator's office while Malene cried and promised she just wanted what was best for their daughter, remembered signing papers because he'd believed that co-parenting could work if they both tried hard enough. However, Thornton continued, his voice taking on a sympathetic tone that made Darius's skin crawl, circumstances have changed significantly. Miss Price has worked tirelessly to build a stable, secure environment for Nia. She has a steady career as a sales manager with Bennett Communications. She's purchased a 3-bedroom home in the Riverside School District, one of the best in the county. She can provide Nia with her own room, a backyard, proximity to excellent schools, and the kind of structured, predictable routine that child development experts agree is essential for healthy growth. Each word was a hammer blow. Darius stared at the legal pad in front of him, at his own scribbled notes that suddenly seemed pathetic in comparison to whatever color-coded presentation Thornton probably had prepared. Mr. Cole, on the other hand, Thornton said, and Darius could hear the shift in his tone from sympathetic to concerned, like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis, works irregular hours as an independent repair technician. His income fluctuates wildly from month to month. He lives in a 2-bedroom rental apartment in a complex that has, according to public records, multiple code violations pending. He cannot provide the same level of educational support, extracurricular opportunities, or financial security that Miss Price can offer. Darius wanted to stand up and scream, wanted to tell the judge that the code violations were a broken security gate and peeling paint in the stairwell, nothing that affected Nia's safety. Wanted to explain that his irregular hours meant he was available to pick Nia up from school every single day he had her. That he'd turned down better paying jobs because they required nights and weekends away from his daughter. But he stayed quiet because he'd learned that lesson too. That interrupting, that showing emotion, that doing anything except playing by their rules would be used against him. Your Honor, Thornton said, his voice softening for the kill shot, my client is not asking the court to terminate Mr. Cole's relationship with his daughter. She recognizes his love for Nia, but she believes, and we will demonstrate through testimony and evidence, that Nia's primary residence should be with her, with Mr. Cole receiving standard visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week. The words hit Darius like ice water. Every other weekend, 1 evening per week. That's what they wanted to reduce him to, a part-time parent, a babysitter in his own daughter's life. Judge Reeves made a note on her file. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Mr. Cole, would you like to make an opening statement? Darius stood, his legs steadier than he expected. He'd practiced this in the mirror at 3 o'clock in the morning, had whispered it to himself while replacing a water heater in a stranger's basement, had refined it while driving Nia to school, her small hand in his as they crossed the parking lot. Your Honor, he began, his voice quieter than Thornton's, but no less clear. I'm not going to pretend I have what Miss Price has. I don't have a big house or a fancy job title. I can't hire an attorney to make me sound better than I am. He saw Malene shift in her seat, but he didn't look at her, couldn't look at her. What I have is 3 years of showing up, of packed lunches and homework at the kitchen table, of bedtime stories and Sunday pancakes, of being there when Nia skins her knee or has a nightmare or just needs someone to listen. I'm not asking this court to choose me over her mother. I'm asking the court to let me keep being her father. Not just on weekends, not just for supervised visits, but in the everyday moments that actually matter. He sat down. The room was quiet. No one laughed this time. Judge Reeves looked at both sides. This court will hear testimony and review evidence before making any determination. Mr. Thornton, call your first witness. The petitioner calls Miss Malene Price to the stand. Darius watched his ex-wife stand and walk to the witness box. She moved with the same graceful confidence she'd had when they first met 10 years ago at a community college fundraiser. Back then, he'd been a young technician just starting out, and she'd been a marketing assistant with ambitions that burned brighter than anything he'd ever seen. They'd fallen in love fast. Too fast, probably. Had gotten married after 8 months because it felt right, and they were young and stupid enough to believe that love was enough. For a while it had been. Then Nia was born, and reality set in. The sleepless nights, the arguments about money, the slow, grinding realization that they wanted different lives. Malene wanted career advancement, networking events, a house that impressed the neighbors. Darius wanted time with his daughter, simplicity, a life that didn't require pretending to be someone he wasn't. The divorce had been civil. They'd both agreed they'd failed as a couple, but could still succeed as parents. Joint custody had seemed like the fair solution. Nia with Darius Monday through Wednesday, with Malene Thursday through Sunday, alternating holidays. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Nia adjusted. They figured out routines until 6 weeks ago when Malene's attorney had served him with modification papers at his apartment door. Now she sat in the witness box, her hand on a Bible, swearing to tell the truth. Darius wondered which version of the truth she'd chosen to remember. Miss Price, Thornton began gently, can you describe your current living situation? Malene's voice was steady, rehearsed. I purchased a home last year in the Riverside neighborhood. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house with a fenced backyard. Nia has her own room there, decorated the way she likes. There's a study where she can do homework. The neighborhood has a park 2 blocks away and excellent schools. And your employment? I'm a senior sales manager at Bennett Communications. I've been with the company for 5 years. My salary is $72,000 a year plus bonuses. I have health insurance, dental, a 401k. My schedule is Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, with occasional evening events. Thornton nodded approvingly. And when you have those evening events, who watches Nia? I have a regular babysitter, Mrs. Chen. She's a retired teacher who lives 3 houses down. Nia loves her. Darius made a note, babysitter, as if hiring someone to watch your child was the same as being there yourself. But, Miss Price, can you tell the court why you're seeking to modify the custody arrangement? Malene's expression shifted. Practiced concern. Worry that looked genuine if you didn't know her tells. I'm worried about Nia's stability. Darius's work schedule is unpredictable. Sometimes he's called out for emergency repairs at night or on weekends. Nia's mentioned that he's had to bring her to job sites when he couldn't find childcare. And his apartment. She paused as if the words pained her. It's not a bad place, but it's small. Nia sleeps on a fold-out couch in the living room. There's no yard. The complex has safety issues, broken gates, poor lighting. Do you believe Mr. Cole loves Nia? Of course. Malene's voice softened. Darius is a devoted father. I don't question his love. I question whether his current situation can provide what Nia needs as she gets older. She's 8 now. She needs consistency, a permanent bedroom, access to better educational resources. I can provide those things. Thornton smiled. No further questions, Your Honor. Judge Reeves looked at Darius. Mr. Cole, cross-examination. Darius stood, his notes trembling slightly in his hand. He'd written out questions, practiced them, but now that Malene sat there looking so composed, so reasonable, he felt the words slipping away. Miss Price, he began, his voice rougher than he intended. You said Nia has her own room at your house. When did you buy that house? 13 months ago. And before that, where did Nia sleep when she stayed with you? Malene's jaw tightened. I had a 1-bedroom apartment. She slept on the couch. The same arrangement I have now. Yes, Darius said. But you mentioned my work schedule is unpredictable. What's your longest stretch without an evening event or overnight business trip? I don't track it that specifically. Would it surprise you to know that in the last 6 months, you've had 12 evening events and 3 overnight trips? That's according to the schedule you sent me for Nia's pickups and drop-offs. Thornton stood. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Cole is not qualified to submit schedule analysis as evidence. I'm just asking a question based on the calendar she provided, Darius said. I can submit it if needed. Judge Reeves looked interested. I'll allow it. Miss Price, please answer. Malene shifted. My evening events are work-related. They're professional obligations. And my emergency repair calls are how I pay rent and buy groceries, Darius replied. The difference is, when I have an emergency call, I bring Nia with me and she does homework in the truck. When you have an evening event, you hire someone else to put her to bed. That's not fair. You said Nia mentioned being brought to job sites. Did she say she hated it? Malene hesitated. No. Did she say she felt unsafe? No. But did she mention that I let her hold the flashlight sometimes? That she calls herself my assistant? That she's learned about tools and problem solving and how things work? Darius, that's not the same as... As what? His voice cracked slightly. He took a breath, steadied himself. As a babysitter who's nice but isn't her parent? He swallowed, then pushed on. You said the apartment has safety issues. Have you ever been inside my apartment? Once when I picked Nia up. Once in 3 years. He held her gaze. And the broken gate and poor lighting, did you report those to the landlord or just save them for your attorney? Malene's composure finally slipped. I'm trying to do what's best for our daughter. So am I, Darius said quietly. I've been doing it every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for 3 years. The question is whether you think best means the biggest house or the most consistent presence. Mr. Cole, Judge Reeves interrupted gently. Do you have further questions or are you making a closing argument? Darius realized he'd crossed a line. Sorry, Your Honor, no further questions. He sat down, his hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Malene stepped down from the witness box, her expression unreadable. Thornton called his next witness, Deborah Marsh, Malene's coworker and friend. She testified about Malene's dedication, her organizational skills, the way she balanced motherhood and career. It was all complimentary, all true, and all designed to paint Malene as the superior parent. When it was Darius's turn to cross-examine, he kept it brief. Miss Marsh, how often do you see Miss Price interact with Nia? At office events, maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And in those interactions, would you say Nia seems happy? Very happy. Thank you. No further questions. The final witness before lunch recess was Dr. Philip Harrion, a child psychologist Thornton had brought in as an expert. He had credentials that stretched across 2 pages, a calm demeanor, and opinions delivered with the certainty of someone who testified in 50 cases just like this one. Dr. Harrion, Thornton began, in your professional opinion, what factors contribute most significantly to a child's healthy development? Stability, structure, and resources, Harrion replied smoothly. Children thrive when they have consistent routines, adequate educational support, and environments that minimize stress. Poverty and housing insecurity are significant predictors of developmental challenges. Darius felt the words like stones dropping into his stomach. If a child were moving between 2 homes with vastly different resource levels, what impact might that have? It can create confusion and anxiety. The child may internalize a sense of instability or feel responsible for the discrepancy. In cases where one parent can provide significantly better material conditions, consolidating primary residence with that parent often reduces stress. Thornton thanked him and sat down. Judge Reeves looked at Darius. Cross-examination. Darius stood slowly. He hadn't prepared for an expert witness because he couldn't have afforded to hire one himself, but he'd spent enough time reading about child psychology during his midnight research sessions to know one thing. Dr. Harrion, he said, have you ever met my daughter, Nia? The psychologist blinked. No, I have not. Have you reviewed any records of her school performance, medical history, or social development? I was provided with general background information by Mr. Thornton's office. But you haven't met her, haven't observed her in either home, haven't spoken with her teachers or pediatrician. My testimony is based on general principles of child development. General principles, Darius repeated, not Naya specifically. Correct. So when you talk about confusion and anxiety from moving between homes, you're not talking about what Nia actually experiences. You're talking about what might happen to a hypothetical child. Harrian's professional mask slipped slightly. The principles apply broadly. I'm sure they do, Darius said, but you can't tell this court whether Nia is confused or anxious, can you? Because you've never met her. Mr. Cole, I understand you're trying to discredit my expertise. I'm not trying to discredit anything, Darius interrupted. I'm just pointing out that you're giving opinions about a little girl you've never met, in a situation you've never observed, based on information provided by the side that's paying you. Objection, Thornton snapped on his feet. Your Honor, Mr. Cole is impugning the witness's professional integrity. Judge Reeves looked at Darius with something that might have been respect. Mr. Cole, rephrase your question or move on. No further questions, Darius said and sat down. The judge called a lunch recess. The courtroom emptied, leaving Darius alone at his table. He stared at his notes, at the scribbled points he'd planned to make, at the evidence he'd tried to gather with no subpoena power and no investigator. He'd landed a few punches, but he could feel the tide moving against him, the weight of money, credentials, expert testimony. The system wasn't designed for people like him to win. It was designed to process them efficiently and move on. He'd felt that kind of quiet pressure his whole life. Be twice as careful, twice as prepared, twice as calm, because the room was always looking for a reason to dismiss you. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, who was watching Naya during the hearing. Asterisk. She made you a drawing, says it's good luck. You've got this. Attached was a photo, Nia's crayon sketch of two stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. Above them, in her careful 8-year-old handwriting, asterisk best dad asterisk. Darius's vision blurred. He saved the image and put the phone away before anyone could see him crying in an empty courtroom. When the afternoon session began, Judge Reeves called Darius to testify on his own behalf. He walked to the witness box, placed his hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. As if there were any other option. Thornton approached for cross-examination, and Darius braced himself for the questions he knew were coming. About his income, his housing, his ability to provide. About all the ways he fell short of what money could buy. But before Thornton could begin, Judge Reeves held up a hand. Mr. Cole, she said, her voice cutting through the tension, I'd like to hear from you directly, not in response to Mr. Thornton's questions. Tell me about your life with Nia. Darius blinked, surprised. In all his preparation, he hadn't prepared for simple honesty. It's not fancy, he began. We have spaghetti on Mondays because that's her favorite. I'm not a great cook, but I try. Tuesday nights are homework at the kitchen table. She's working on multiplication now and fractions. She's good at math. Gets frustrated with reading sometimes, so we do it together. Take turns with the pages. He could see Malene watching him, her expression complicated. Wednesday mornings, I make pancakes. She likes chocolate chips in them, but only if they're arranged in a smiley face. I don't know why that matters, but it does to her, so I do it. Judge Reeves was taking notes. The apartment is small. She doesn't have her own room, but she's decorated the fold-out couch with her drawings and stuffed animals. She calls it her nest. She says it's cozy. I've offered to sleep on the couch so she could have the bedroom, but she says she likes being close to the kitchen so she can smell breakfast cooking in the morning. Darius's voice caught. He pushed through it. I can't give her everything. I know that. I can't give her a yard or her own bathroom or a college fund that's already fully funded. What I give her is time, attention. The feeling that when she's with me, she's the most important thing in my world. Because she is. The courtroom was silent. Mr. Thornton mentioned I bring her to job sites sometimes. That's true. Last month, I had an emergency call on a Tuesday night. Furnace out in an elderly couple's home, temperature dropping. Nia came with me. She held the flashlight while I replaced the heating element. The couple gave her hot chocolate afterward and told her she was a good helper. She talked about it for a week. He looked directly at Judge Reeves. Is that worse than leaving her with a babysitter? I don't know. Maybe by some standard I'm not meeting requirements. But she's learning that work has dignity, that helping people matters, that her dad doesn't disappear. He takes her with him. Judge Reeves's voice softened. Mr. Cole, what would it mean to you if this petition were granted? Darius had to pause, had to breathe through the tightness in his chest. It would mean losing most of my time with my daughter. It would mean becoming a visitor in her life instead of a parent. It would mean she'd learn that love isn't enough, that money and houses and titles are what actually matter. He looked at Malene now, unable to help himself. I don't want to take Nia away from her mother. I never have. But I'm asking this court to let me keep being her father in the way I've been her father for 3 years. Present, consistent, every Monday through Wednesday. Showing up even when it's hard. Judge Reeves made a final note. Thank you, Mr. Cole. You may step down. Thornton waived cross-examination, maybe because there was nothing left to attack. Maybe because he recognized that sometimes the truth didn't need to be cross-examined. The judge looked at both sides. I've heard enough for today. We'll reconvene next Thursday at 9 a.m. for closing arguments and my ruling. Both parties should be prepared for final statements. The gavel fell. Darius gathered his papers with numb hands. Across the aisle, Malene and Thornton spoke in low voices. Darius didn't try to listen, didn't want to know what strategies they were planning. He walked out of the courthouse into gray afternoon light. His truck was parked 3 blocks away in a free lot because he couldn't afford the garage rates. He walked slowly, his body feeling like it had been through a physical fight. When he reached the truck, he sat in the driver's seat and pulled out his phone. Mrs. Kowalski answered on the second ring. How'd it go? I don't know, Darius said honestly. I said what I needed to say. Now we wait. Nia wants to talk to you. There was rustling, then his daughter's voice, bright and clear. Daddy. Hey, sweetheart. Did you win? Darius closed his eyes. The judge hasn't decided yet, but I told her about us, about pancakes and homework and being a team. Did you tell her about the furnace job where I held the flashlight? I did. Good, because I was really helpful that night. You were perfect, Darius said, his voice breaking. When are you coming home? Soon, baby, real soon. Okay. Mrs. Kowalski is teaching me to make pierogi. Can we have them for dinner? Absolutely. Love you, Daddy. Love you more than anything. He ended the call and sat in the silence of the truck, watching people pass on the sidewalk. Lawyers in expensive suits heading to their next cases, parents picking up children from daycare, lives intersecting and diverging in the endless flow of a city that didn't care about any of them individually. Darius started the engine. He had 7 days until the judge would decide whether he was good enough to keep being a father to his daughter. 7 days to live with the fear that everything he'd built, the routines, the trust, the small perfect moments, could be reduced to every other weekend. He drove toward Mrs. Kowalski's apartment where Nia was waiting with pierogi dough on her hands and stories about her day at school. He drove towards the only thing that mattered. And he prayed not to any deity, but to the abstract force of fairness he had to believe existed somewhere in the universe. That being present would count for something when the gavel fell for the last time. The pierogi were slightly lopsided, the edges crimped with the enthusiastic imprecision of 8-year-old fingers. But they tasted perfect. Nia sat across from Darius at their small kitchen table, swinging her legs beneath her chair, recounting every detail of her day with Mrs. Kowalski. And then she showed me how to pinch the dough. See? Nia demonstrated with invisible dough between her fingers. You have to make sure it's sealed or all the potato stuff falls out when you cook it. Sounds like you're becoming a chef, Darius said, forcing lightness into his voice, despite the weight pressing on his chest. Mrs. Kowalski says I'm a natural. She says her granddaughter in Pittsburgh would like me. Nia paused, tilting her head. Daddy, why do you look sad? Darius set down his fork. He'd never been good at hiding things from her. Nia had always been perceptive, reading his moods the way other kids read books. I'm just tired, sweetheart. Court stuff makes my brain work really hard. Did you tell the judge about me? I did. What did you say? Darius reached across the table and took her small hand in his. I told her about spaghetti Mondays and homework Tuesdays and pancake Wednesdays. I told her you're the best flashlight holder in the whole state. I told her the truth. Nia squeezed his hand. Then you'll win because the truth is you're the best daddy. If only the world worked that simply. If only love and presence were measured on the same scale as bank accounts and square footage. But Darius didn't say that. Instead, he squeezed back and smiled. How about we watch a movie tonight? Your choice. Nia's eyes lit up. Can we make popcorn? The real kind or the microwave kind? Real kind, on the stove. 20 minutes later, they were settled on the fold-out couch, Nia's nest, as she called it, with a bowl of popcorn between them and an animated movie playing on the second-hand television Darius had bought from a yard sale. Nia leaned against his shoulder, her tight curls still damp from her bath, smelling like the cheap strawberry shampoo she insisted was her favorite. Halfway through the movie, she fell asleep. Darius carefully extracted himself, carried her to the couch bed he'd already pulled out, and made it up with her favorite sheets, the ones with clouds and rainbows. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stood there in the dim light, watching her breathe. This was what they wanted to take from him. Not completely, not entirely. They dressed it up with words like visitation and relationship maintenance, but they wanted to turn him from a parent into a schedule, from a daily presence into a twice-monthly event. He couldn't let that happen. Darius retreated to his bedroom, a space barely large enough for a double bed and a dresser, and opened his laptop. The screen's glow illuminated stacks of papers on his nightstand, court documents, printed statutes, notes scrawled on whatever surface had been available when an idea struck. He'd become an accidental legal scholar over the past 6 weeks, teaching himself family law the same way he taught himself HVAC repair and plumbing, through desperation and determination. He pulled up the folder where he'd been compiling evidence. Photographs of Nia at the park, doing homework at the kitchen table, helping him sort tools in the truck. Receipts from the grocery store showing regular purchases of her favorite foods. Her report cards, all A's and B's. Teacher comments praising her participation and kindness. Medical records showing every checkup, every vaccination, every appointment he'd never missed. But he knew it wasn't enough. Thornton would have binders, expert analyses, financial projections. What did Darius have? Receipts and photographs and a stack of handwritten notes that probably looked pathetic compared to professionally prepared exhibits. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk, Mr. Cole, this is Jennifer Martinez. I was in the courtroom today. I'm a family law attorney. Can we talk? Darius stared at the message, suspicion and hope warring in his chest. He typed back, asterisk, I can't afford an attorney. The response came quickly. Asterisk, I know. That's why I'm offering pro bono. I have some thoughts about your case. Coffee tomorrow. 7 a.m. at Riverside Cafe. Darius's hands trembled as he typed, asterisk, why would you help me for free? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Asterisk, because I watched you cross-examine a child psychologist who'd never met your daughter. And you made him look like exactly what he was, a hired voice with no actual knowledge. Because I've seen too many good parents lose their kids to expensive lawyers. Because sometimes the system needs people who give a damn. 7 a.m. asterisk. Darius exhaled slowly. I'll be there. He set the phone down and allowed himself the smallest flicker of hope. Maybe he wasn't as alone in this fight as he'd thought. The Riverside Cafe was a local spot tucked between a laundromat and a tax preparation office, the kind of place where refills were free and the waitress knew everyone's usual order. Darius arrived at 6:55, ordered black coffee he didn't need, and sat at a corner booth watching the door. Jennifer Martinez walked in at exactly 7. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair pulled into a practical ponytail and glasses that gave her a studious air. She wore jeans and a sweater, no expensive suit, no briefcase that whispered success. She looked like someone who'd chosen this profession because she believed in it, not because it paid well. She slid into the booth across from him. Thanks for meeting me. Thanks for offering, Darius replied. I have to admit, I'm still trying to figure out the catch. Jennifer smiled. No catch. I run a small practice, mostly court-appointed cases and sliding-scale family law. I take on a few pro bono cases each year when something catches my attention. Yesterday, you caught my attention. By looking like an idiot who can't afford a lawyer? By looking like a father who's fighting for his kid despite impossible odds. She pulled a legal pad from her bag. I did some research last night. Maline's attorney, Richard Thornton, has a reputation. He's good at what he does, packaging his clients as the objectively superior choice. He wins about 70% of his custody modifications. Darius's stomach sank. Great. But he has a weakness, Jennifer said. He relies on presentation over substance. He assumes judges will be impressed by financial stability and expert testimony without looking deeper. And sometimes he's right. But Judge Reeves isn't the type to be dazzled by credentials. She cares about one thing, what's actually best for the child. So, what do I do? Darius asked. Jennifer leaned forward. You stop trying to compete with Malene on her terms. You're never going to out-earn her or out-house her or out-expert witness her. Instead, you show the court something Thornton can't manufacture. Evidence of actual parenting, Darius said. Day-to-day proof. I know you've got photos and receipts, Jennifer said. That's good, but it's not enough. I need you to think bigger. Do you have anything that shows pattern, consistency, a record of the daily work of being a parent? Darius's mind raced through the chaos of his apartment. The kitchen drawer full of Naya's school papers, the calendar on the fridge where he tracked her activities, the shelf where he kept her library books organized by due date. And then he remembered. I have a notebook. Jennifer's eyebrows raised. What kind of notebook? When Malene and I first started joint custody, I was worried I'd mess up the schedule, forget a pickup time, or miss a school event. So I started writing everything down, every shift change I made to be available for her, every time I adjusted a job to accommodate her schedule, every doctor's appointment, school conference, playground visit, 3 years worth. Jennifer's expression shifted from interested to focused. Where's this notebook? At home, in my truck, actually. I keep it with me. I need to see it today if possible. After breakfast, they drove to Darius's apartment complex. Nia was still asleep when they arrived, and Mrs. Kowalski, who'd agreed to watch her for a few hours, was reading a magazine on Darius's couch. Everything okay? The elderly woman asked, eyeing Jennifer with curiosity. This is Jennifer Martinez, Darius said. She's an attorney helping me with the case. Mrs. Kowalski's face broke into a relieved smile. Good. About time you had someone in your corner besides yourself. Darius retrieved the notebook from his truck's glove compartment. It was a cheap composition book, the kind students bought for 79 cents at back-to-school sales. The cover was battered, edges curled from being shoved into his work bag countless times. He handed it to Jennifer. She opened it carefully, as if handling something precious. The first page was dated 3 years and 2 months prior, just after the divorce was finalized. Asterisk, September 12th, first Monday with Naya's official joint custody. Picked her up from Malene's at 6 p.m. Seemed quiet, maybe nervous about changes. Made spaghetti. She ate 2 plates. Bedtime routine, bath, story. Goodnight moon, lights out at 8:30. She asked if I'd still be here in the morning. Told her I'd always be here for her. Jennifer flipped through pages slowly, her eyes scanning Darius's cramped handwriting. Every entry was similar, not flowery or elaborate, just factual records of daily life. But together they formed something remarkable, an undeniable chronicle of presence. Asterisk October 3rd. Nia's soccer practice canceled due to rain. Took her to the library instead. Checked out 4 books about space. She's interested in astronauts now. Asterisk November 19th. Parent-teacher conference. Mrs. Patterson says Nia is excelling in math, needs encouragement in reading. Started reading together every night for 30 minutes. Asterisk December 24th, Christmas Eve with Nia. Made cookies, burned first batch. She said they were perfect anyway. Watched movies until she fell asleep on couch. Best night of my year. The entries continued, page after page. Soccer games and science fairs, skinned knees and stomach bugs, homework struggles and breakthrough moments, birthday parties and quiet Tuesdays. The mundane and the meaningful, all documented with the same careful attention. This is incredible, Jennifer murmured. It's just notes. No, she said, looking up at him. This is proof. This is 3 years of a father showing up, adjusting his entire life around his daughter's needs, documenting every sacrifice and every moment. Thornton can bring all the expert witnesses he wants. This notebook is worth more than anything he can manufacture. Will the judge care? Darius asked. If we present it right, absolutely. This isn't about who has more money. It's about who's been doing the actual work of parenting. And this, she held up the notebook, is your evidence. Over the next few days, Jennifer worked with Darius to organize his case. She reviewed every document, prepared questions for the final hearing, and helped him understand the legal framework he was operating within. She explained that family court judges had wide discretion, that they were supposed to prioritize the child's best interest above all else, but that best interest was subjective and often influenced by biases toward financial stability. The system assumes money equals better parenting, Jennifer told him during one of their preparation sessions. Your job is to show Judge Reeves that stability isn't measured in square footage. It's measured in consistency, presence, and love. On the morning of the final hearing, Darius woke before dawn. He couldn't eat breakfast. His stomach was a knot of anxiety that tightened with every passing hour. He dressed in the same wrinkled shirt, the same discount khakis because they were all he had. But this time he didn't feel ashamed. He felt like himself. Nia was still asleep when he left. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "See you soon, sweetheart." Mrs. Kowalski met him at the door. "You bring her home, you hear me? That little girl belongs with you." "I'm trying." "Don't try, do." Jennifer met him outside the courthouse. She handed him a coffee and a folder containing the notebook. She'd made copies of key pages, organized them chronologically, prepared them as evidence. "Do you ready?" she asked. "No." "Good. That means you care. Let's go." Courtroom 7B felt different this time. Maybe because Darius had an attorney sitting beside him. Maybe because he understood the process better. Or maybe because he'd stopped pretending he could win by playing their game and had decided to play his own. Judge Reeves took the bench. Thornton stood, looking confident and polished as ever. "Your Honor, before we proceed to closing arguments, my client would like to present additional testimony." "Proceed," Judge Reeves said. Thornton called a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen to the stand. She was a child development specialist with credentials that took 2 minutes to read into the record. She testified about the importance of educational opportunities, extracurricular activities, and exposure to cultural experiences, things that required money. When Jennifer cross-examined, she was surgical. Dr. Chen, in your research, have you found any correlation between a parent's income level and a child's sense of emotional security? Financial stability can reduce household stress, which benefits children. That's not what I asked. Is there a direct correlation between how much money a parent makes and how emotionally secure their child feels? Dr. Chen hesitated. Emotional security is multifactorial, so no direct correlation, not in isolation. No, Jennifer didn't let go. Have you reviewed any specific evidence about Nia Cole's emotional state in either household? I was provided general information. But you haven't met Nia, observed her in either home, or conducted any assessment specific to her? No. So your testimony, like Dr. Harrian's, is based on general principles rather than Nia's actual experience? Yes. Thank you. No further questions. Thornton's confidence flickered. He called Malene back to the stand for additional testimony, but Jennifer objected on grounds of redundancy, and the judge sustained it. Then it was Darius's turn. Jennifer stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call Mr. Cole to the stand, and I'd like to submit evidence that I believe will be illuminating for the court. She handed the notebook to the clerk, who passed it to Judge Reeves. The judge opened it, her expression neutral, as she scanned the first few pages. Darius took the stand, his heart hammering against his ribs. Jennifer approached with a gentleness that steadied him. Mr. Cole, can you explain what this notebook is? It's a record of my time with Nia, every day I've had her for the past 3 years. Why did you keep this record? Because I was scared I'd mess up, that I'd forget something important or miss a detail. I wanted to make sure I was doing right by her. Jennifer picked up his notebook, now marked as evidence. Can you read the entry from March 15th of last year? Darius took the notebook, finding the page. His voice was rough as he read aloud. And March 15th, Nia came home from school upset. Classmate told her she's poor because we live in an apartment. Talked to her about how homes aren't measured by size. Made her favorite dinner. She said she likes our apartment because it smells like home. Tucked her in early. She asked if we'd always be together. Promised her I'd always be her dad. The courtroom was silent. Can you read May 23rd? Jennifer asked. Darius flipped pages. May 23rd, Nia's school play. She was a sunflower front row seat. She waved at me during curtain call, took her for ice cream after. She talked about being nervous, but said seeing me in the audience made her brave. One more, December 7th. Darius's throat tightened. December 7th, Nia asked why mommy has a bigger house. Explained that people have different things, but that doesn't change love. She said she doesn't care about big houses. She cares about pancakes and homework help and bedtime stories. Made me promise we'd never stop Wednesday pancakes. Jennifer took the notebook back. Your Honor, this notebook contains over 1,000 entries. Every single day Mr. Cole has had custody of his daughter is documented here, not with grand gestures or expensive activities, but with the daily work of parenting. Homework sessions, meals cooked, conversations had, comfort given, consistency maintained. She turned back to Darius. Mr. Cole, in the past 3 years, how many of your scheduled custody days have you missed? None. How many times have you been late picking Nia up from school? Twice. Once because of traffic from a job site. Once because my truck broke down. Both times I called ahead and she waited with her teacher. How many parent-teacher conferences have you missed? None. How many doctor's appointments? None. How many bedtimes, homework sessions, or meals? Darius's voice broke. None that I could help. I've been there every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for 3 years. I've been there. Jennifer let that sit in the air. Then she asked the question Darius had been dreading. What would it mean to Nia if you lost primary custody? Darius looked at the judge. It would break her heart. Not because she doesn't love her mother, she does. But because she'd learned that showing up every day isn't enough. That being present doesn't matter as much as having money. And I can't let her learn that lesson. I won't. Jennifer returned to her table. No further questions. Thornton stood for cross-examination, but for once he seemed unsure of his footing. Mr. Cole, this notebook is certainly thorough, but it doesn't change the fact that Miss Price can provide better material conditions. Better material, maybe, Darius said. Not a better life. Sophie would have her own bedroom in my client's home. Nia has a nest in mine, Darius said. She chose that. She decorated it herself. Thornton's jaw tightened. Your apartment has documented safety violations, a broken security gate, and chipped paint. Nothing that puts my daughter at risk. I filed complaints with the landlord, but even if I moved tomorrow, I'd still be the same father I've been for 3 years. Mr. Thornton, Judge Reeves interrupted. Do you have questions about the notebook entries or Mr. Cole's testimony? Thornton looked at Malene. Something passed between them. Doubt, maybe, or the recognition that this wasn't going the way they'd planned. No further questions, he said. Darius stepped down. His legs felt weak, but he made it back to the table without stumbling. Judge Reeves looked at both attorneys. Closing arguments. Thornton delivered his with practiced precision, talking about resources, opportunities, stability, defined in conventional terms. It was persuasive in the way expensive things often are, polished and professional, and utterly disconnected from the human beings it was supposed to serve. Then Jennifer stood. Your Honor, this case has been presented as a choice between stability and instability, between adequate resources and inadequate resources, but that framing is false. The real choice is between documented presence and theoretical advantage. Mr. Cole has proven with 3 years of handwritten evidence that he has been a constant, consistent, loving presence in his daughter's life. Not perfect, but present. Not wealthy, but devoted. She held up the notebook. I've heard. Miss Price can offer Nia a bigger house, better schools, more extracurricular opportunities. Those are real advantages, but they're advantages that come with a cost. Less time with a father who has structured his entire life around being available for her. The question isn't whether Nia would benefit from more resources. The question is whether those benefits outweigh what she'd lose by seeing her father relegated to every other weekend status. Jennifer's voice softened. Family court is supposed to serve the best interest of the child, not the best interest of economics or appearances or what looks good on paper. Nia Cole has 2 parents who love her, but only one of them has spent 3 years documenting every moment of that love in a notebook kept in a work truck. Only one of them has consistently chosen presence over advancement, time over money, being there over getting ahead. She looked at Judge Reeves. The court has discretion to maintain the current arrangement or modify it. I'm asking you to look at the evidence not of what each parent can theoretically provide, but what each parent has actually provided. And the evidence shows that Darius Cole has been showing up every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday for 3 years. That should count for something. Jennifer sat down. Judge Reeves was quiet for a long moment, reviewing her notes. Then she spoke. I'll take this matter under advisement. Both parties will be notified of my decision within 5 business days. We're adjourned. The gavel fell. Darius sat motionless as the courtroom emptied. Moline and Thornton left quickly without looking back. Jennifer gathered her materials, gave Darius's shoulder a squeeze. You did everything right, she said. Now we wait. Darius nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. 5 business days, 5 days to wonder if his love was enough, if his presence mattered, if a battered notebook could outweigh a balance sheet. 5 days to hold his daughter close and pretend everything would be okay. He walked out of the courthouse into bright afternoon sunlight, his phone already in his hand, already dialing Mrs. Kowalski to tell Nia he was on his way home. Nia was building a fort out of couch cushions when Darius walked through the door. She draped a bedsheet over the construction, creating a canopy that sagged in the middle and had lined the inside with every stuffed animal she owned. Mrs. Kowalski sat in the kitchen drinking tea, a knowing smile on her weathered face. "Daddy!" Nia scrambled out of the fort and launched herself at him. Darius caught her, lifted her up despite the fact that she was getting too big for it, and held on maybe a second longer than usual. "Hey, sweetheart, what's all this?" "It's a castle. I'm the princess, and Mr. Fluffkins is the dragon guarding the treasure." She pointed at a ratty stuffed rabbit positioned at the fort's entrance. "Fierce dragon," Darius said. "The fiercest." Nia wriggled down and grabbed his hand. "Come see the inside. I made it really cozy." Darius crouched and peered into the fort. She'd arranged pillows as seating, positioned a flashlight for mood lighting, and created what appeared to be a snack station using an overturned plastic container. "This is incredible. You built this yourself." Mrs. Kowalski helped with the sheet part, but the design was all me. "A true architect." Nia beamed. Then her expression shifted, became more serious. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" Darius's stomach tightened. "Of course. Are you and Mommy fighting about me?" The question hit like a physical blow. He'd tried so hard to shield her from the details, to maintain normalcy, to pretend that the court case was just boring adult business that didn't concern her. But Nia was smart. She noticed things. "We're not fighting, baby," he said. "We're just working out some details about schedules." Emma at school said her parents went to court and then she only saw her dad on weekends. Is that going to happen to us? Darius pulled her close, his heart fracturing. "I'm doing everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. But what if the judge says yes? Then we'll figure it out together." He tilted her chin up so she was looking directly at him. "But Nia, I need you to know something. No matter what any judge says, no matter what papers anyone signs, I am always going to be your dad. Always. You understand?" She nodded, but her eyes were wet. "I love you more than anything in this world," he said. "More than my truck, more than pancakes, more than fixing broken things. You're the most important thing in my life." "More than your toolbox?" Nia asked, a small smile breaking through. "Oh, way more than my toolbox. And that's saying something because I really love that toolbox." She hugged him tight, her small arms around his neck. "I love you too, Daddy. I hope the judge is nice." "Me too, baby," Darius whispered. "Me too." Mrs. Kowalski left shortly after, squeezing Darius's arm on her way out. Whatever happens, that little girl knows she's loved. That's what matters. Darius wanted to believe her, but as he made spaghetti that night, Monday tradition never broken, he couldn't shake the fear that love might not be enough, that the system would look at his bank account and his modest apartment and decide that Nia deserved better, regardless of what Nia herself wanted. They ate dinner mostly in silence, Nia chattering about school while Darius made appropriate responses and tried not to let his mind spiral. After dishes, they did homework at the kitchen table. Nia was working on a writing assignment about her hero. "Who'd you pick?" Darius asked, glancing at her paper. She covered it with her hand. "It's a surprise. You'll see when I'm done." "Fair enough." At 8:30, he tucked her into the fold-out couch bed, read her 2 chapters from the book they were working through together, and kissed her forehead. "Daddy." "Yeah. Whatever the judge says, we're still a team, right? Darius's vision blurred. Always a team, nothing changes that. She fell asleep holding his hand. He sat beside her in the dark, listening to her breathe, memorizing the moment in case someday soon moments like these became rare instead of routine. The next 3 days crawled by with excruciating slowness. Darius went to work because bills didn't pause for custody battles. He fixed a commercial refrigerator at a restaurant on Tuesday, replaced a water heater in a rental property on Wednesday, and responded to an emergency HVAC call at an office building on Thursday. Nia came with him to 2 of the jobs, doing homework in the truck and occasionally handing him tools when he needed an extra set of hands. Why do people always break their air conditioning in summer and their heaters in winter? Nia asked while they sat in the parking lot of the office building, waiting for Darius's next appointment. Murphy's Law, Darius said. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible time. That's a dumb law. Agreed, but it keeps me employed. Nia was quiet for a moment, swinging her legs from the passenger seat. Daddy, do you wish you had a different job? Like mommy's job, where you wear nice clothes and work in an office? Not even a little bit. Really? Really. I like fixing things. I like helping people when their stuff breaks. And I like that my schedule is flexible enough that I can pick you up from school and take you to soccer practice and be around when you need me. Emma's dad works in an office. She says she barely sees him. Different jobs work for different people. Your mom's job is perfect for her. My job is perfect for me. I think your job is cool, Nia said. You know how to fix everything. Not everything. I still can't fix that squeaky wheel on your scooter. Nia giggled. That's because the squeak is part of its personality now. Is that what we're calling it? Yep. Thursday evening, Jennifer called with an update. I spoke with the court clerk. Judge Reeves is reviewing all the evidence. She's being thorough, which is a good sign. It means she's taking this seriously. When will we know? Darius asked. Could be tomorrow. Could be early next week. I know waiting is torture, but try to stay focused on Nia. Keep your routine normal. Normal, as if anything about this was normal. But Darius tried. He made Wednesday pancakes with chocolate chip smiley faces. He helped Nia with her math homework. He took her to the park and pushed her on the swings until his arms ached. He read bedtime stories and sang off-key lullabies and pretended that his world wasn't balanced on the edge of a knife. Friday afternoon, Nia came home from school with an envelope. Akshi, Mrs. Patterson said to give this to you, she announced, handing it over. Darius opened it carefully. Inside was Nia's completed writing assignment, the one about her hero. The teacher had written asterisk, beautiful work asterisk, across the top in red pen. Nia had earned an A. The essay was titled, Asterisk, My Hero, My Dad. Darius's hands trembled as he read. My hero is my dad because he works really hard and always has time for me. He fixes broken things for people and helps them when they are sad that their heater doesn't work or their sink is leaking. He says helping people is important, even if they can't pay very much. My dad makes the best pancakes on Wednesdays. He lets me put the chocolate chips in smiley faces. He helps me with homework even when fractions are really hard. He takes me to his job sometimes and lets me hold the flashlight. He says I'm a good helper. My dad lives in a small apartment, but he makes it feel big because of all the love. He says homes aren't measured by how many rooms they have, but by how much love is inside them. Our apartment has a lot of love. Some kids have heroes who are famous or strong or can fly. My hero is my dad because he shows up every day and never gives up on me. He says we're a team and teams stick together. That's why he's my hero. Darius had to set the paper down because his tears were threatening to smudge the ink. Nia watched him anxiously. Do you like it? He pulled her into a hug so tight she squeaked. I love it. It's the best thing anyone's ever written about me. Mrs. Patterson says I have to read it to the class next week for Hero Day. You're going to be great. That night, after Nia was asleep, Darius sat in his small bedroom and allowed himself to fall apart. He cried silently into his hands, shoulders shaking. 3 years of fear and love and desperation pouring out. He cried for the impossibility of the situation, for the unfairness of a system that measured worth in dollars, for the terror of losing his daughter to a custody arrangement that would turn him into a visitor. He cried because Nia had written that he was her hero, and he didn't feel heroic at all. He felt scared and inadequate and completely out of his depth. His phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. Asterisk decision came through. Court Monday at 9 a.m. for ruling. Whatever happens, you fought hard. Nia knows that. Darius stared at the message. Monday. 3 more days of not knowing. 3 more days of pretending everything was fine while his insides twisted into knots. He texted back a simple thank you because he didn't trust himself to write more. The weekend passed in a blur. Saturday, he took Nia to the library where they checked out books about space exploration because she was still fascinated by astronauts. Sunday, they made cookies that turned out slightly burned, but edible. Nia declared them perfect anyway because she was generous like that. Generous in ways that made Darius's heart hurt. Sunday night, after Nia was in bed, Darius pulled out the notebook one more time. He flipped through pages, reading random entries, remembering moments. The time Nia learned to ride a bike, and he'd run beside her until his lungs burned. The night she'd had a fever, and he'd stayed up all night with cool washcloths and children's medicine. The morning she'd lost her first tooth and been so excited she'd woken him up at 5:30 to show him. 3 years of his life documented in cheap blue ink on lined paper. 3 years of being present, of showing up, of choosing her over everything else. It had to be enough. It had to. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Darius dressed in his wrinkled shirt and discount khakis, the uniform of a man who'd never learned to play the part people expected. Mrs. Kowalski arrived at 7 to watch Nia, who was still asleep. "Bring her home," the old woman said, her accent thicker when she was emotional. "You bring that baby home to her papa." "I'm trying." "No trying, doing." Darius kissed Nia's forehead, whispered that he loved her, and left before she could wake up and ask questions he couldn't answer. The courthouse looked the same as it had every other time. Imposing gray stone, wide steps, the weight of bureaucracy pressing down from above. Jennifer met him outside, 2 coffees in hand. "You ready?" "Not even close." "That's honest. Let's go." Courtroom 7B was less crowded this time. Just Darius, Jennifer, Malene, Thornton, and the usual court staff. Judge Reeves entered promptly at 9 o'clock, her expression unreadable. "Please be seated. I have reviewed all testimony, evidence, and written arguments in the matter of Price versus Cole." She adjusted her glasses and looked at both parties. "This has been a difficult decision. Both parents clearly love Nia. Both have strengths to offer, but joint custody requires cooperation, stability, and a recognition that the child's needs come before parental convenience." Darius's heart hammered so hard he could hear it in his ears. Ms. Price has presented compelling evidence of her ability to provide material advantages. Better housing, educational opportunities, financial security. These are not insignificant factors. Children benefit from stability, and resources can provide that. Darius felt the ground shifting beneath him. However, Judge Reeves continued, and Darius's breath caught, this court must consider not just theoretical advantages, but demonstrated commitment. Mr. Cole has presented extraordinary evidence of consistent daily presence in his daughter's life. The notebook submitted as evidence shows a level of dedication and documentation that is, frankly, remarkable. She held up the composition book. Over 1,000 entries spanning 3 years. Every custody day documented, every adjustment made, every moment prioritized. This is not the record of a man seeking credit or recognition. This is the record of a father doing the daily, unglamorous work of parenting. Thornton shifted uncomfortably. Malene stared at her hands. The court is not in the business of rewarding wealth or punishing poverty. A parent's income is one factor among many. And in this case, Mr. Cole has demonstrated that he has structured his entire life around being available for his daughter. Insane, he has maintained perfect attendance at school functions, medical appointments, and custody exchanges. He has created routines that Nia clearly values and depends upon. Judge Reeves looked directly at Darius. That said, the court also recognizes Miss Price's genuine love for Nia and her desire to provide opportunities. This is not a case of one fit parent and one unfit parent. This is a case of 2 parents with different resources approaching the same goal from different angles. She paused, letting the tension build. After careful consideration, the court finds that the current joint custody arrangement serves Nia's best interest. The petition for modification is denied. Custody will remain as currently ordered. Nia Cole will continue to reside with each parent according to the existing schedule. Darius's legs nearly gave out. Jennifer grabbed his arm, steadying him. Oh. However, Judge Reeves added, her tone sharpening, I am adding a provision. Both parents are ordered to attend co-parenting mediation to address communication issues and ensure that future conflicts are resolved without returning to court. Nia deserves parents who can work together, not against each other. She looked at Malene. Miss Price, your desire to provide for your daughter is admirable, but providing for a child and being present for a child are not the same thing. Mr. Cole has proven he understands the difference. Then she looked at Darius. Mr. Cole, continue doing what you've been doing. Show up. Be consistent. Love her through the everyday moments. That's what she needs most. The gavel fell. The case was over. Darius sat frozen in his chair, unable to process what had just happened. Jennifer was grinning beside him, packing up her materials. You won, she whispered. Darius, you won. I won, he repeated, the words foreign in his mouth. Across the aisle, Malene stood slowly. Thornton was already heading for the exit. His billable hours concluded. His interest expired. But Malene stayed. She crossed the space between them, her heels clicking on the courtroom floor. Darius stood to meet her. Congratulations, she said quietly. Malene, no, I mean it, she said. You deserve this. I got caught up in thinking that giving her more stuff was the same as being a better parent. And you proved me wrong. Darius saw the tears in her eyes and felt his anger deflate. I don't want to keep her from you, he said. I never did. I know. I just wanted to win. Wanted to prove I could give her everything. But you already were giving her everything. Just not the kind of everything I was measuring. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Malene extended her hand. Co-parenting mediation. We should actually try to make it work this time. Darius shook her hand. Agreed. She left without another word. Jennifer touched Darius's shoulder. Go home. Hug your daughter. Celebrate. Darius nodded, still dazed. He walked out of the courthouse into brilliant morning sunlight. The world looked exactly the same as it had an hour ago, but everything had changed. He'd walked in terrified of losing his daughter and walked out with confirmation that his love, his presence, his daily, unglamorous work had been enough. His phone rang. Mrs. Kowalski. Well, we won, Darius said, his voice breaking. I get to keep her. The old woman's whoop of joy was so loud he had to pull the phone away from his ear. I'm coming home now. Can you tell Nia I'll be there in 20 minutes? I'll tell her. And Darius, I knew you'd win. That judge, she had sense. The drive home took forever and no time at all. Darius parked in his usual spot at the apartment complex, climbed the stairs to the second floor, and opened the door to find Nia sitting on the couch, her legs swinging nervously. Her warm brown skin looked almost golden in the window light. She looked up when he entered. Daddy! He couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. He just nodded, opened his arms, and she flew into them. You won? She asked, her voice muffled against his shoulder. We won. Nothing changes. Still Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, still pancakes and homework and being a team. Nia burst into tears, clinging to him like she'd never let go. Mrs. Kowalski quietly let herself out, giving them privacy for the moment. Darius sank onto the couch, Nia in his lap, despite the fact that she was really too big for it now. They sat there crying together, relief and joy and 3 years of fear finally releasing. I wrote you a poem at school, Nia hiccuped, for if you won. Can I hear it? She pulled back, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. Then she recited from memory. Roses are red, violets are blue. The judge was smart. She picked me and you. We're still a team like we've always been, Monday through Wednesday, forever and when. The meter was off and the rhyme scheme was questionable, but it was the most beautiful poem Darius had ever heard. That's perfect, baby. You're perfect. Does this mean I don't have to move to mommy's house? You're not moving anywhere. This is your home, your nest, your castle with Mr. Fluffkins, the fierce dragon. Nia giggled through her tears. Can we have spaghetti tonight, even though it's Monday and we already had it? We can have spaghetti every night this week if you want. I don't want it every night, but maybe twice. Twice it is. They spent the rest of the day doing nothing special and everything important. They went to the park, and Nia pumped high on the swings, laughing as the wind whipped her curls. They went to the grocery store and bought ingredients for spaghetti and the fancy ice cream Nia usually only got on birthdays. They came home and built an addition onto the blanket fort, making it large enough for both of them to fit inside. That evening, sitting on the fort with a flashlight casting shadows on the sheet ceiling, Nia asked the question Darius had been dreading. "Daddy, why did Mommy want me to live with her all the time?" Darius chose his words carefully. "Your mom loves you very much. She wanted to give you things she thought would make your life better. A bigger house, your own room, things like that. She wasn't trying to be mean, she just had a different idea about what better meant. But you showed the judge that better doesn't mean bigger." Something like that. Nia was quiet, thinking. Then she said, "I'm glad I get to stay with you the same amount. I like Mommy's house, but I like our apartment more. It feels like us." "It definitely feels like us," Darius said, and kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for fighting for me." "I'll always fight for you," he whispered. "Always." They fell asleep in the fort that night, Nia curled against his side, Mr. Fluffkins keeping guard at the entrance. Darius lay awake long after she drifted off, staring at the sheet ceiling, finally allowing himself to believe that this was real, that he'd won, that his daughter wasn't going anywhere. The battered composition notebook sat on the kitchen table, 3 years of proof that showing up mattered, that love could be measured not in square footage or bank accounts, but in documented moments of presence. Darius closed his eyes and let exhaustion claim him, secure in the knowledge that when he woke up, Nia would still be there. Still his daughter, still his team, still home. The victory lasted exactly 5 days before reality came crashing back. Darius woke up Tuesday morning to his phone ringing at 6:30. The contractor he'd been doing regular work for, a reliable source of income that paid half his rent every month, was on the other end of the line. "Darius, I hate to do this, but I'm cutting back on subcontractors. Got hit with some unexpected costs on the Morrison project. I have to let you go." Just like that. No warning, no transition period. Just gone. Darius sat on the edge of his bed, phone still pressed to his ear after the call ended, calculating numbers in his head. Without that contract, he'd lost 40% of his monthly income. He had maybe 3 weeks before the shortfall became catastrophic. He dragged himself to the kitchen and started making coffee, trying to figure out how to tell Nia that Pancake Wednesday might need to become Oatmeal Wednesday for a while, that Ice Cream Fridays might have to pause, that the financial stability the court had questioned was about to become even more precarious. Nia emerged from her nest at 7, hair wild from sleep, dragging Mr. Fluffkins behind her. "Morning, Daddy." "Morning, sweetheart. Want some cereal?" She climbed into her chair at the kitchen table. "Are you okay? You look sad." Darius forced a smile. "Just tired, didn't sleep great." "Is it because of court stuff?" "No, baby. Court stuff is over. We won. Remember? This is just regular life stuff." Nia poured cereal into her bowl with intense concentration. "What kind of regular life stuff?" "Work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." But she was already worrying. He could see it in the way her small shoulders tensed, in the way she stirred her cereal without eating. She'd developed a sixth sense for his moods over the past few months, attuned to every shift in his emotional weather. "Daddy," she said softly, "if you need money, I have $17 in my piggy bank. You can have it." Darius's heart cracked clean down the middle. "Baby, no, that's your money. You've been saving for that new art set you wanted. But you said teams help each other." He crossed to her, knelt beside her chair, and took her small hands in his. "We are a team, the best team. But it's my job to take care of the money stuff. Your job is to be 8 years old and worry about homework and soccer and whether Mr. Fluffkins needs a friend. Mr. Fluffkins is fine with being an only rabbit." "Good to know." She studied his face with those perceptive eyes. "Promise you'll tell me if things get bad." "I promise things won't get bad," Darius said. "We'll be okay." It was a promise he had no business making, but he made it anyway, because that's what parents did. They promised safety even when the ground was shifting beneath them. They built certainty out of hope and willpower. After dropping Nia at school, Darius spent the day making calls. He contacted every contractor he'd ever worked with, put out feelers for new contracts, checked job boards, and sent his information to 3 different HVAC companies looking for technicians. By evening, he had 2 promising leads and 1 definite maybe. But nothing concrete, nothing guaranteed. The co-parenting mediation session was scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Darius almost canceled. He had a potential job interview that conflicted, but Jennifer had texted him a reminder that the court had ordered it, and Judge Reeves didn't strike him as someone who appreciated non-compliance. The mediation office was in a building that tried too hard to look calming. Soft beige walls, inspirational posters about communication and compromise, a waiting room with magazines nobody read. Darius arrived 10 minutes early and sat in an uncomfortable chair, rehearsing what he'd say. Malene walked in exactly on time, dressed in business casual, her expression guarded. They exchanged awkward nods and sat on opposite sides of the room, like strangers at a bus stop. The mediator, a woman named Dr. Ellen Vasquez, called them into her office. It was decorated with the same aggressively neutral aesthetic as the waiting room. Cream walls, abstract art, plants that probably weren't real. "Thank you both for coming," Dr. Vasquez began. She had a gentle voice and the kind of face that had witnessed 1,000 family conflicts without losing compassion. "The purpose of these sessions is to improve communication and establish strategies for co-parenting without court intervention. This is a safe space. Everything said here is confidential." Darius shifted in his chair. Malene crossed her legs and stared at a point just past Dr. Vasquez's shoulder. "Let's start simple," the mediator continued. "What's one thing each of you appreciates about how the other parents Nia?" Silence stretched between them. Darius cleared his throat. "Malene makes sure Nia has opportunities I can't provide. Music lessons, summer camps, things like that. She exposes Nia to experiences that matter." Malene's expression softened slightly. "Darius is consistent. He shows up when he says he will. Nia knows she can count on him." It was a start. A small one, but a start. Dr. Vasquez made notes. "Good. Now, what's one area where you feel communication could improve?" This time, Malene spoke first. "I feel like Darius sees me as the enemy, like I'm trying to take Nia away from him when all I want is to give her a good life." "Because you literally filed to take primary custody," Darius said before he could stop himself. "See that?" Malene's voice rose. "You're still angry about it." "You're damn right I'm angry. You tried to reduce me to every other weekend because I thought it was best for Nia based on what? The size of your apartment?" Dr. Vasquez held up a hand. "Let's pause. Darius, I hear that the custody petition felt like an attack. Malene, I hear that you believed you were acting in Nia's interest. Can we acknowledge that both of those things might be true?" Darius forced himself to breathe. "Fine, yes, both true." Malene nodded stiffly. "Here's what I'm observing," Dr. Vasquez said. "You're both coming from places of love for Nia, but you're measuring success differently. Darius, you measure it in time and presence. Malene, you measure it in opportunities and resources. Neither is wrong, but they're causing conflict because you're not communicating about how those different approaches can coexist." She let that sit for a moment. What does Nia need from both of you? Not what you each think is best, but what she actually needs. Darius thought about the essay Nia had written, about the way she called their small apartment home, about Wednesday pancakes and bedtime stories and the feeling of being needed. "She needs to know she's loved," he said quietly. "She needs stability. Not the kind that comes from big houses, but the kind that comes from knowing her parents aren't going to keep fighting over her." Malene's eyes were wet. "She needs both of us. Not competing, not keeping score, just both of us showing up in our own ways." "So how do we do that?" Darius asked. The rest of the session focused on practical strategies, setting boundaries around discussions of custody, agreeing to monthly check-ins about Nia's needs, committing to direct communication instead of letting resentments build. By the time they left, Darius felt cautiously optimistic that maybe they could actually make co-parenting work. In the parking lot, Malene stopped him. "Darius, I owe you an apology. A real one, not the courtroom version." He waited. "I let my insecurities drive that custody petition. I wanted to prove I could give Nia everything, and I lost sight of the fact that she already had everything she needed. I'm sorry. I put you through hell because I was trying to compensate for feeling guilty about the divorce. Darius hadn't expected that level of honesty. I wasn't perfect either, he admitted. I could have communicated better about money issues instead of just trying to handle everything myself. Can we start over? Malene asked. Not as exes, not as adversaries, just as Nia's parents. I'd like that, Darius said. They shook hands, and this time it felt genuine. Darius drove back to his apartment feeling lighter than he had in months. The financial stress was still there, still waiting to pounce, but at least the co-parenting nightmare seemed to be easing. Maybe things were finally stabilizing. He should have known better. Friday afternoon, while Darius was replacing a garbage disposal in a rental unit, his phone rang. The landlord of his apartment complex. Mr. Cole, I'm calling to inform you that the building has been sold. New ownership is taking over next month, and they're raising rents across the board. Your new rent will be $1,400 a month. Darius nearly dropped his phone into the sink. His current rent was $950, a $450 increase. That's not legal. You can't raise it that much without proper notice. You'll receive official notice in writing within 3 business days as required by law. The increase takes effect in 60 days. If you choose not to renew at the new rate, you'll need to vacate by then. The call ended. Darius stood in the stranger's kitchen, water dripping from the disconnected pipes, his entire world tilting sideways. $1,400 a month was impossible. He couldn't afford it, even with the contractor work he'd just lost. And finding a new apartment in 60 days while maintaining his custody schedule and covering moving costs, he finished the job on autopilot, collected his payment, and drove home in a daze. Nia was at Malene's for the weekend, which meant Darius had 2 days to spiral in private. He spent Friday night at his kitchen table with a calculator and a growing sense of dread. He ran the numbers forward and backward, tried every configuration, looked for expenses to cut. There was nothing left to cut. He'd been running lean for 3 years. He didn't have cable or streaming services. He bought generic groceries. His phone plan was the cheapest available. His truck was paid off, but 15 years old and constantly threatening to die. He had no subscriptions, no gym membership, no luxuries of any kind. The math didn't work. He could find a cheaper apartment, but cheaper meant worse neighborhoods or longer commutes or both. It meant pulling Nia out of her school district, disrupting her routines, proving Malene right about his inability to provide stability. He could ask for more work, but he was already working as much as his custody schedule allowed. He couldn't take night jobs or weekend jobs without hiring childcare he couldn't afford. He could ask Malene to adjust the custody schedule, giving her more time so he could work more. But that felt like admitting defeat, like validating every argument Thornton had made in court about his financial inadequacy. By Saturday morning, Darius had convinced himself he was going to lose everything anyway. The court had let him keep Nia, but reality was going to take her away through sheer economic force. He'd end up in some terrible apartment an hour from her school, seeing her less because logistics made it impossible, watching her slip away. Not because of legal battles, but because he couldn't afford to stay in her life the way he needed to be. He was sitting on their couch, staring at nothing, when Mrs. Kowalski knocked on his door. "You look like death," she announced, pushing past him into the apartment. "When did you last eat?" "I don't know. Yesterday." She made a disgusted sound and headed for his kitchen. "I'm making you lunch. You're going to eat. Then you're going to tell me what's wrong." "I'm fine. Lying to old women is a sin. Sit." Darius sat. Mrs. Kowalski moved around his kitchen with the confidence of someone who'd raised 6 children and buried 2 husbands. She made him a sandwich that was probably just bread and cheese, but tasted like care. "Now talk," she commanded, sitting across from him. He told her everything: the lost contract, the rent increase, the impossible math, the feeling that he was drowning, and no matter how hard he swam, the water just kept rising. Mrs. Kowalski listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "You know what your problem is?" she finally said. "Not enough money, too much pride." She pointed a gnarled finger at him. "You think you have to do everything alone. Be the hero. Save the day. Never ask for help. That's foolish." "I can't ask for handouts." "Who said handout? I said help. There's a difference." She leaned forward. "You have people who care about you. Jennifer, she worked your case for free because she believed in you. I watched Nia because I love that little girl like my own grandchild. Your neighbors, they know you're good people. You think you're alone, but you're not. You're just too stubborn to see it. Even if people wanted to help, Darius said, what can they do? I need money I don't have. You need ideas you haven't thought of yet. Mrs. Kowalski stood. I know a man who owns rental properties. Good man, fair prices. I'll call him. See if he has anything in Nia's school district. Mrs. Kowalski, I'll also talk to Father Mikos at the church. They have a community fund for people going through hard times. Before you argue, it's not charity. You fixed the church's boiler twice for free. They owe you. I didn't do that expecting payment. Exactly. You gave freely. Now let others give freely to you. That's how community works. She left before he could argue further. Sunday, Darius picked Nia up from Maline's house. His ex-wife met him at the door looking concerned. Is everything okay? You look exhausted. Just tired, Darius said. Work stuff. Darius, if you need to adjust the schedule. I don't, he said too quickly. We're fine. Maline didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Nia bounded out with her backpack, chattering about the movie they'd watched and the park they'd visited. Darius listened and smiled and tried not to think about how all of this might change soon. Monday morning, Mrs. Kowalski knocked again. She had a phone number written on a slip of paper. Mr. Castillo, she said. He has a 2-bedroom in the Riverside district, $10.50 a month. It's older, needs some cosmetic work, but it's safe and clean and in Nia's school zone. He says you can look at it today if you want. Darius stared at the paper. Why would he give me a good rate? Because I told him you were good people and you'd take care of the place, Mrs. Kowalski said. Also, because I may have mentioned you do repair work and might be willing to help with maintenance in exchange for keeping the rent stable. It was more than Darius had dared hope for. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me. Go look at it. If it works, take it. If it doesn't, we'll find something else. The apartment was in an older building, but well maintained. The landlord, Mr. Castillo, was a soft-spoken man in his 60s who'd clearly put work into keeping the property respectable. The unit had 2 actual bedrooms, decent light, and a small balcony. Mrs. Kowalski speaks highly of you, Mr. Castillo said as they walked through. Says you're reliable, good with repairs, good father. I try to be, Darius said. I've been a landlord 30 years, Mr. Castillo said. I've learned that good tenants are worth more than maximum rent. You take care of this place, help me out with minor repairs, and we'll keep your rent at $10.50 for at least 2 years. After that, we'll talk, but I don't gouge people. Darius wanted to hug the man. When can I move in? 1st of next month. That gives you time to pack, arrange moving. They shook hands. Darius signed a lease right there, put down a deposit he'd been saving for emergencies, and walked out feeling like maybe the universe wasn't entirely against him. The moving process was chaotic. Darius had accumulated more stuff than he'd realized in 3 years, and packing while maintaining Nia's routines and working enough to cover expenses was a juggling act that left him exhausted. But neighbors helped. Mrs. Kowalski organized a brigade of elderly Polish women who descended on his apartment with boxes and packing tape and opinions about how to properly wrap dishes. Jennifer stopped by with her truck and helped move furniture. Consider it payment, she said when Darius tried to thank her, for letting me prove that good lawyering can still win. Even Maline offered to keep Nia an extra night to give Darius time to move without worrying about childcare. We're co-parents now, she said simply. That means helping each other. The new apartment felt huge compared to the old one. Nia's bedroom was small, but hers. She could decorate it however she wanted, have actual privacy, invite friends over without feeling self-conscious. The first night there, she stood in the doorway of her room, looking overwhelmed. This is really all mine. All yours, baby. Where will you sleep? In the other bedroom. We each get our own space now. Nia's face crumpled. But what about the nest? What about being close to the kitchen so I can smell breakfast? Darius knelt to her level. You can still make a nest if you want, and breakfast will smell just as good from your room. But you're getting bigger, and big kids need their own space. Can we still do Pancake Wednesday? Always. That's never changing. She seemed reassured, but still uncertain. That night, Darius heard her crying softly in her new room. He went to her, found her curled up with Mr. Fluffkins. I miss the old apartment, she whispered. I know, Darius said. Change is hard, even when it's good change. What if I don't like it here? Then we'll make it feel like home together. That's what we do, right? We're a team. She nodded against his shoulder. Can you stay until I fall asleep? He stayed until her breathing evened out, then stayed longer because he needed the reassurance as much as she did. They'd survived the custody battle, survived the financial crisis, survived the move. They were still together, still a team. The following Thursday was the second mediation session. Darius arrived feeling more stable than he had in weeks. Malene looked lighter too, less defensive. Dr. Vasquez started with a check-in. How has communication been since our last session? Better, Malene said. I helped Darius with moving logistics. We actually talked like normal people instead of combatants. And how did that feel? Weird at first, Malene admitted. Then kinda nice, like remembering that we used to be friends before we were exes. Darius nodded. It felt like co-parenting instead of competing. They spent the session working through logistics. How to handle schedule changes, what information to share about Nia's activities, how to make decisions together without it becoming a battle. By the end, they'd established actual protocols that felt workable. I'm impressed with your progress, Dr. Vasquez said. You've moved from adversarial to collaborative in a relatively short time. That takes real work. In the parking lot afterward, Malene lingered. Darius, I heard you lost the Matthews contract and had to move. He stiffened. Who told you that? Nia mentioned something about a new apartment. I asked around. Why didn't you tell me you were struggling? Because it wasn't your problem. Nia is my daughter too, Malene said. If you're struggling to make ends meet, that affects her. I could have helped. I didn't need... Stop, please. Malene's voice was gentle. I'm not trying to prove you can't provide. I'm trying to be a co-parent. That means if one of us is going through something, the other should know. Not to judge, just to help if possible. Darius forced himself to swallow his pride. You're right, I should have said something. Are you stable now? Getting there, Darius said. The new place is affordable. I picked up some new contracts. It's tight, but manageable. If that changes, tell me, Malene said. We can adjust the schedule temporarily, or I can cover some of Nia's expenses to ease the pressure. Not as a power play, just as a parent helping another parent. It was the kind of conversation they should have been having all along. The kind that treated co-parenting as actual cooperation instead of Cold War. Thank you, Darius said. I mean it. Thank you, Malene replied, for fighting for her, for showing me that being present matters more than I was giving it credit for. They parted on good terms, and Darius drove home feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Hope that this could actually work, that they could actually raise Nia together without destroying each other in the process. Nia was waiting when he got home, doing homework at the kitchen table in their new apartment. She looked up and smiled. Daddy, I figured out fractions. He sat beside her, looked at her work, all correct, and felt his chest swell with pride. You're a genius. I'm really not, she said, grinning, but I'm getting better at asking for help when I need it. Mrs. Patterson says that's an important skill. Mrs. Patterson is right. Nia returned to her homework. Darius watched her for a moment. This fierce little person who'd weathered so much change with such grace. She'd survived her parents' divorce, a custody battle, a move, and countless adult complications. And she was still here doing fractions, planning what to add to her new room, asking for Wednesday pancakes. Resilient, that's what she was. Resilient in ways Darius was still learning to be. That night, after tucking her into bed in her new room, which she'd already started decorating with drawings and stuffed animals, Darius pulled out the composition notebook one last time. He flipped to the last entry he'd made before the custody hearing and added a new one. Asterisk moved to new apartment, 2 bedrooms. Nia has her own space. She cried the first night, missing the nest, but she's adjusting. We're adjusting. Court decided in our favor. Malene and I are learning to co-parent for real. Money is still tight, but we're managing. Nia figured out fractions today. She's growing up so fast. Some days I want to freeze time. Other days I can't wait to see who she becomes. Mostly, I just want to keep showing up, keep being here, keep being her dad. That's all that matters. He closed the notebook and set it on the shelf beside Nia's library books. 3 years of documentation, proof that presence mattered. He didn't need to keep writing entries to prove anything anymore. The court had ruled. The battle was won. But he'd keep writing anyway, because someday when Nia was older, he'd give her the notebook, let her see the record of these years from his perspective. Let her know how hard he'd fought to keep being her father, how much every moment with her had mattered. For now, though, he just had to keep doing what he'd always done. Show up, make pancakes, help with homework, and love her through the everyday moments that turned out to be the most important ones. After all, 3 weeks into life at the new apartment, Darius's phone rang during breakfast. It was a Tuesday morning, and Nia was methodically separating her cereal into color groups before eating them in a specific order, a ritual Darius had learned not to question. "Mr. Cole, this is Principal Henderson from Riverside Elementary." Darius's stomach dropped. Calls from the principal were never good news. "Is Nia okay?" "She's fine physically," Principal Henderson said. "But there was an incident this morning I need to discuss with you. Can you come in?" 20 minutes later, Darius sat in Principal Henderson's office while Nia waited outside with the school secretary. The principal was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the patience of someone who'd spent 30 years managing children and their chaos. Nia got into an altercation with another student during morning recess. "An altercation?" Darius repeated. It didn't compute. Nia was gentle, conflict-averse, the kid who apologized to furniture when she bumped into it. Another girl, Emma Hartley, made some comments about Nia's previous living situation, the principal said. Called her poor, said some unkind things about your apartment. Nia pushed her. Darius closed his eyes. "Is Emma okay?" "She's fine, startled more than hurt, but Nia's behavior is concerning because it's so out of character. I wanted to talk to you before deciding on consequences." "What did Emma say exactly?" Principal Henderson consulted her notes. According to witnesses, Emma said Nia used to live in a trashy apartment where she had to sleep on a couch because her dad was too broke to afford a real bed. Nia told her to stop. Emma continued. That's when Nia pushed her. The protective anger that surged through Darius was immediate and fierce. Some kid had mocked his daughter for circumstances beyond her control, had weaponized their financial struggles. "What happens now?" Darius asked. "Normally, physical contact means automatic suspension," Principal Henderson said. "But given Nia's record, she's never had a single behavioral issue, and the provocation, I'm inclined toward a warning and mediation between the two girls. However," the principal added, "I wanted your input, and I wanted to make sure everything's okay at home. Nia's been through some changes recently." Darius appreciated the principal's discretion. She clearly knew about the custody case, small school, everyone knew everything, but she was giving him space to address it on his terms. "We moved apartments a few weeks ago," Darius said. "It's been an adjustment, and there was a custody situation earlier this year that was stressful for everyone. But things are stable now, better than they've been in a while, actually." "I'm glad to hear that," Principal Henderson said. "Why don't we bring Nia in and talk this through together?" Nia entered looking small and miserable. Her eyes were red from crying. She sat in the chair beside Darius and stared at her shoes. "Nia," Principal Henderson said gently, "can you tell your dad what happened?" Nia's voice was barely audible. "Emma said mean things about our old apartment, about how I was poor and Daddy couldn't afford things. She said it in front of everyone." "And what did you do?" the principal asked. "I pushed her," Nia whispered. "I know I shouldn't have, but she wouldn't stop, and everyone was laughing, and I just wanted her to stop." Darius put his hand on her shoulder. "Look at me, sweetheart." She raised her eyes, tears spilling over. "What Emma said was mean and wrong," Darius said. "You have every right to be upset. But pushing her wasn't the right choice. You know that, right?" Nia nodded miserably. "When someone says something hurtful, what should you do instead?" "Tell a teacher," she whispered. "Exactly," Darius said. "Because the second you push someone, even if they deserved it, you become the one who did something wrong. And that's not fair, but that's how it works." Principal Henderson leaned forward. "Nia, I appreciate that you are defending yourself and your family, but we have rules about physical contact for everyone's safety. I'm not going to suspend you this time because I understand you were provoked, but you will need to apologize to Emma, and both of you will have a mediation session with the school counselor to work through this." "Okay," Nia said quietly. "And if Emma or anyone else says hurtful things in the future, you come to a teacher immediately. No exceptions. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." After the meeting, Darius walked Nia back to class. In the hallway, she stopped and grabbed his hand. "Daddy, are we poor?" The question hit him like a physical blow. He knelt down to her level. "We don't have as much money as some people," he said, "but we have enough. We have a home, food, clothes, everything we need. More importantly, we have each other. That's what matters." "But Emma said—" "Emma doesn't know anything about our life," Darius said. "She doesn't know about Wednesday pancakes or how you help me at job sites or how we're a team. She doesn't know that our old apartment might have been small, but it was full of love. And she definitely doesn't know that our worth as people has nothing to do with how much money we have." Nia considered this. "I still feel bad about pushing her." "Good," Darius said. "That means you have a conscience. You'll apologize and you'll do better next time. That's called growing up." She hugged him tight. "I love you, Daddy." "Love you too, baby, more than anything." That evening, after Nia was in bed, Darius found himself thinking about Emma's comments, about how even though they'd won the custody battle and moved to a better apartment, the stigma of financial struggle still followed them, still marked Nia as different, as less than in the eyes of kids who'd never worried about rent or whether there was enough money for school supplies. He pulled out his phone and texted Malene. * Nia had an incident at school today. Another kid made comments about our old apartment. Nia pushed her. She's okay, but wanted you to know. The response came quickly. * Is she in trouble? * warning and mediation. But I think it shook her up. * she asked if we're poor. * what did you tell her? * that we have enough and that our worth isn't measured in dollars. * good answer. Want me to talk to her about it? * maybe. She's processing. Let's see how the mediation goes. Keep me posted. * and Darius. Thank you for telling me. It was a small exchange, but it represented something significant. Actual co-parenting. Communication without conflict. Working together instead of against each other. The mediation session happened 2 days later. The school counselor, Shambit Rivera, facilitated a conversation between Nia and Emma that started awkward and defensive, but gradually softened. Emma, it turned out, was dealing with her own family stress. Her parents were going through a contentious divorce, and she'd been lashing out at everyone. "I'm sorry I said those things," Emma mumbled, looking at her hands. "I was mad about my parents, and I took it out on you." Nia, generous even in hurt, accepted the apology. "I'm sorry I pushed you," Nia said. "That was wrong." They wouldn't become best friends, but they reached a truce. More importantly, Nia came home that day looking lighter, like she'd set down a weight she'd been carrying. The following Monday brought a different kind of surprise. Darius was finishing a furnace repair at a medical office when the office manager approached him. "You're Darius Cole, right? The guy who does HVAC and plumbing." "That's me. I manage 3 other properties for the same company. We've been looking for a reliable maintenance contractor. Your work here is excellent. Thorough, honest pricing, everything documented. Would you be interested in a regular contract, all 4 properties, general maintenance, and emergency calls?" Darius tried to keep his expression professional despite the fact that his heart was racing. "I'd definitely be interested," he said. "What kind of schedule are we talking about?" They discussed terms. It was steady work, good pay, flexible enough to accommodate his custody schedule. The kind of contract that would finally give him the financial stability he'd been chasing for 3 years. "I'll send you the paperwork by end of week," the manager said. "Assuming your references check out, we'd like to start 1st of next month." Darius shook her hand, thanked her professionally, and waited until he was back in his truck before allowing himself to feel the full weight of relief. A stable contract, steady income, the ability to stop living paycheck to paycheck and actually start building something resembling financial security. He called Jennifer to share the news. "That's incredible," she said. "See, good things happen to good people." "I'm not sure the universe works that way," Darius said, "but I'll take it." "You earned it," Jennifer told him. "By being reliable, doing quality work, building a reputation. That's not luck. That's the result of showing up consistently." The same principle that had won him the custody battle was working in his professional life. Presence, consistency, reliability. They mattered in ways that couldn't be measured on a balance sheet, but eventually showed up in opportunities and trust. Wednesday pancakes that week felt celebratory. Nia arranged the chocolate chips into an extra elaborate smiley face. and Darius made bacon, even though it wasn't usually in the budget. "Why are we having fancy breakfast?" Nia asked, her mouth full of pancake. "Because sometimes we need to celebrate good things," Darius said. "I got a new work contract, steady jobs for the next year at least." "Does that mean we're not poor anymore?" "We were never poor, sweetheart," Darius said gently. "But yes, it means things will be a little easier. Maybe we can start saving for that art set you wanted." Nia's face lit up. "Really?" "Really. You've been patient about it. And teams celebrate together when good things happen." She threw her arms around him, sticky with syrup, and Darius held her close, feeling like maybe finally they were finding their footing. The third mediation session with Malene focused on long-term planning. Dr. Vasquez guided them through discussions about Nia's future needs as she got older. "She's 8 now," the mediator said, "but adolescence is coming. How will you handle situations like dating, social media, increased independence?" It was strange to think about Nia as a teenager when she still slept with a stuffed rabbit and believed in making wishes on dandelions. But Dr. Vasquez was right. They needed to establish frameworks now, before those situations became immediate crisis. "We should agree on basic rules that apply at both houses," Malene suggested. "Screen time limits, social media age restrictions, that kind of thing." "So Nia can't play us against each other," Darius agreed. "Consistency across both households." They spent an hour hashing out policies, compromising, finding middle ground. It wasn't always easy. Malene was more permissive about some things, Darius more cautious about others, but they managed to reach consensus on the important issues. "I'm impressed with your progress," Dr. Vasquez said at the session's end. "You've moved from adversarial to collaborative in a relatively short time. That takes real work." In the parking lot, Malene brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. "Darius, I've been thinking, Nia's birthday is next month. Instead of doing separate parties like last year, what if we did one party together? Co-host it. Show her we can actually be in the same room without tension." Darius's first instinct was to refuse. Joint birthday parties felt too complicated, too much potential for things to go wrong. But then he thought about Nia, about what she'd want, about the message it would send. "Okay," he said, "let's do it." Malene looked surprised. "Really?" "Yeah, she'd like that, and you're right. It shows we can work together." "Thank you," Malene said. "I know it's not comfortable for you." "Not much about the past year has been comfortable," Darius said, "but we're figuring it out." Planning Nia's birthday party became an unexpected exercise in cooperation. They split costs down the middle, divided tasks, communicated through text about details. Malene handled invitations and cake. Darius managed venue and activities. They consulted Nia about what she wanted. Turned out she wanted a park party with outdoor games and her friends from school, and both parents present without weirdness. No weirdness was a tall order, but they committed to trying. The party was on a Saturday in early October. The weather cooperated, clear skies, mild temperature, perfect park conditions. Nia invited 12 friends from school, including Emma, who'd become a tentative friend after their mediation. Malene arrived with the cake and decorations. Darius set up games and grilled hot dogs. For the first hour, they moved around each other carefully, like dancers learning new choreography. But gradually, the awkwardness faded. They laughed at the same joke one of Nia's friends told. They worked together to organize a scavenger hunt. They stood side by side while everyone sang happy birthday. And when Nia blew out her candles, she looked up at both of them with such pure joy that Darius felt his throat tighten. After cake, while kids ran wild through the playground, Malene sat beside Darius on a bench. "This is nice," she said quietly. "It is. I keep thinking about the courtroom," Malene said. "About how angry we were, how scared." "I was terrified," Darius admitted. "Thought I was going to lose her." "I was terrified too," Malene said. "Thought I was failing her by not giving her enough." Funny how we were both scared of the same thing for completely different reasons. They watched Nia chase her friends across the grass, her laughter carrying on the breeze. "She's happy," Malene said. "That's what matters," Darius replied. "Not who has the bigger house or the better job, just that she's loved and happy and knows both her parents are there for her." Took us a while to figure that out. Better late than never. When the party ended and parents picked up their kids, Nia was exhausted and sugar crashed, but glowing. She hugged both Darius and Malene at the same time. Best birthday ever, she declared. Thank you for doing it together. After Malene left, Darius and Naya packed up the remaining decorations. Nia chatted about her favorite moments. The scavenger hunt, the cake, the fact that Emma had given her a friendship bracelet. Daddy? Yeah? Are you and Mommy friends now? Darius considered how to answer. We're working on it. We're definitely better than we were. Good, Nia said. I like it when you're both happy. That night, tucking Nia into her bed in their apartment, Darius felt something he hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not the absence of problems. There would always be challenges, financial stress, parenting dilemmas, but the presence of stability, of knowing they could handle whatever came because they'd already survived the worst. The following Thursday, Darius had his final scheduled mediation session with Malene. Dr. Vasquez reviewed their progress. When you started, you couldn't have a conversation without hostility. Now you're co-hosting birthday parties and making joint decisions about Nia's welfare. That's remarkable growth. It feels better than fighting, Malene said. Much better, Darius agreed. Dr. Vasquez smiled. I'm going to officially close your case. You've established good communication patterns and problem-solving strategies. If issues arise in the future, you know how to address them. But I don't think you need mandated mediation anymore. They shook hands with the mediator and walked out together. So we graduated, Malene joked. Top of our co-parenting class. They stood in the parking lot, and for the first time in years, the silence between them wasn't tense. It was just quiet. Darius, Malene said, I know I've said this before, but I really am sorry. For the custody petition, for everything. I got lost in trying to prove something that didn't need proving. I could have communicated better too, Darius admitted. Could have told you when I was struggling instead of trying to handle everything alone. We both could have done a lot of things differently, Malene said. But we're doing better now. That counts for something. It counts for everything, Darius said. She smiled, and for a moment Darius saw the woman he'd fallen in love with a decade ago, before the divorce. Before the court battles, before everything got complicated. They'd never be together again. But maybe they could be friends. Maybe they could build something new from the wreckage of what they'd lost. Take care of our girl, Malene said. Always, Darius replied. 2 months later, on a Wednesday morning in early December, Darius was making pancakes when Nia emerged from her room, holding the battered composition notebook. Daddy, I found this on the bookshelf. Can I read it? Darius's heart skipped. He'd meant to put it away somewhere Nia wouldn't find it until she was older, but he'd gotten distracted and left it out. That's my notebook from the past few years, he said carefully. It's kind of personal. What's in it? He could lie, deflect. Tell her it was just work notes. But they'd always been honest with each other, and he wasn't going to start hiding things. It's a record of our time together, he said. Every day I've had you for the past 3 years, I wrote down what we did. I started it because I was scared I'd forget something important or mess up the schedule. But it became, a way of keeping track of all the moments that mattered. Nia looked at the notebook with new reverence. Can I read some of it? Darius hesitated. Some of the entries were raw, written during his darkest moments of fear and doubt. But Nia was old enough to understand that parents weren't perfect, that they struggled too. Sure, he said. Pick a page. She flipped randomly and landed on an entry from 18 months prior. At April 12th, Nia's soccer game. She scored her first goal. The way her face lit up when the ball went in. I'll remember that forever. Took her for ice cream after. She got chocolate chip and fell asleep in the truck on the way home. Days like this make everything worth it. Nia looked up. You wrote this about me? I wrote about you a lot, Darius said. You're kind of my favorite subject. She flipped to another page. September 3rd, first day of second grade. Nia was nervous about her new teacher. We practiced deep breathing exercises in the truck. She held my hand all the way to the classroom door. When she came out that afternoon, she was smiling, said her teacher was nice, and she made a new friend. Sometimes all kids need is someone to help them be brave. Nia's eyes were wet. Daddy, there's so many pages, over 1,000, one for every day I've had you. Yeah, Darius said softly. Why didn't you tell me you were keeping this? I was going to give it to you when you were older, he admitted, when you could understand what it meant. But I guess now is fine too. Nia carefully set the notebook on the table and climbed into his lap, even though she was really too big for it now. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart, Darius said. more than all the words in all the notebooks in the world. They stayed like that until the pancakes started to burn, then scrambled to save breakfast while laughing at the chaos. That afternoon, while Nia was at school, Darius received an email from Judge Reeves's office. It was a form letter thanking him for his participation in the mediation program and noting that his case had been successfully closed. Attached was a brief personal note from the judge. Asterisk, Mr. Cole, I wanted to commend you on your commitment to your daughter and your willingness to engage in the mediation process. The notebook you presented was one of the most compelling pieces of evidence I've encountered in my years on the bench. It reminded me why I chose family law, because sometimes love and dedication do win. Continue being the father Nia clearly needs. Judge Catherine Reeves. Darius read it 3 times, then saved it to a folder he labeled asterisk important things. Someday, when Nia was older and wanted to know the full story of this year, he'd show her everything. The notebook, the judge's note, the evidence of how hard they'd fought to stay together. December brought the first real snow. Nia pressed her face against the window of their apartment, watching the flakes fall, and Darius made hot chocolate with marshmallows. They built a blanket fort in her room, a new tradition, different from the old apartment's nest, but special in its own way. Christmas was split between both parents. Nia spent Christmas Eve with Malene in her bigger house with the tall tree and elaborate decorations. She spent Christmas morning with Darius in their modest 2-bedroom apartment with the small artificial tree they'd picked up at a discount store. Under the tree, Darius had placed 2 packages. One was the art set Nia had wanted for months. The other was smaller, wrapped in simple paper. Nia opened the art set first and squealed with delight. Then she carefully unwrapped the second package. Inside was a brand new composition notebook, identical to the one Darius had kept for 3 years, and a nice pen. "What's this for?" she asked. "I thought maybe you'd want to start keeping your own record of things that matter to you," Darius said. "Moments you want to remember. You don't have to write every day like I did, just whenever you feel like it." Nia turned the notebook over in her hands, examining it. "Will you read mine?" "Only if you want me to." "I want you to," Nia said, "because we're a team, and teams share things." That afternoon, while Darius cleaned up wrapping paper, Nia sat at the kitchen table and made her first entry. She wrote carefully, her handwriting still developing. "It's a December 25th, Christmas with Daddy. He gave me an art set and a notebook. He said I can write about moments that matter. I think today matters because I'm happy and Daddy's happy, and even though Mommy's not here right now, she's happy too. We're not fighting anymore. We're a family, but different. That's okay. Better than okay. I love my dad. He showed up every day, even when it was hard. That's what heroes do." She didn't show Darius what she'd written, but he saw her smiling as she closed the notebook and tucked it carefully on her bedroom shelf beside her new art supplies. New Year's Eve fell on one of Darius's custody nights. They stayed up until midnight, a rare treat, and watched the ball drop on TV while eating popcorn. When the countdown reached 0 and fireworks erupted on the screen, Darius pulled Nia close. "New year, new beginning," he said. "Was this year bad?" Nia asked. "Parts of it were really hard," Darius said, "but we made it through. We're still here, still together. That's what matters." "What do you hope for next year?" Nia asked. Darius thought about it. "More of this, more moments with you, more stability. Maybe the truck lasting another year without major repairs." Nia giggled. "I hope for that too, and I hope for getting better at fractions and making more friends, and maybe learning to draw horses because they're really hard. Those are good hopes." Nia was quiet for a moment, then asked the question he'd been expecting. "What about you and Mommy? Do you hope you'll get back together?" It still didn't have a perfect answer. "No, baby," Darius said gently. "Your mom and I work better as friends and co-parents than we did as a married couple. But I hope we keep getting better at working together for you." Nia considered this. "That's okay. I don't remember when you lived together anyway. I just remember you being my dad and her being my mom. That's enough." Out of the mouths of children came wisdom adults spent years searching for. They fell asleep on the couch together, the new year stretching ahead with all its uncertainty and possibility. Darius woke first, carefully extracted himself, and carried Nia to her bed. He tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and stood for a moment looking at this small person who'd changed his entire life. The custody battle seemed like another lifetime now. The fear, the desperation, the nights spent convinced he was going to lose everything. They'd faded into memory, replaced by the quiet certainty that they'd survived. Not just survived. They'd won. Not in the dramatic courtroom sense, though that victory still mattered, but in the everyday sense of building a life together that worked. Darius returned to the living room and pulled out his composition notebook one final time. He flipped to a blank page and wrote the last entry he'd ever make in this particular record. January 1st, New Year, Nia and I stayed up until midnight, watched fireworks on TV, talked about hopes for the year ahead. She asked if Malene and I would get back together. I told her no, but that we're learning to be better co-parents. She said that was enough. She's wise beyond her years. The custody case is over. The mediation is over. The crisis has passed. We're stable now. Not perfect, but stable. New apartment, new contracts, new routines. Same love, same commitment, same team. I don't need to keep this notebook anymore. The court doesn't need proof. Nia knows I show up. That's what matters. But I'll keep it anyway. Someday she'll want to know this story. How hard we fought, how scared I was, how much every single day with her mattered. And I'll give her this notebook and let her see that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice you make every single day. A choice to show up, to be present, to put someone else's needs ahead of your own. For 3 years, I chose her. Every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every homework session and bedtime story and Wednesday pancake. Every moment documented in these pages. I'd choose her again 1,000 times over, forever. He closed the notebook and placed it back on the shelf beside Nia's library books and her new empty notebook, waiting to be filled with her own stories. Outside, snow continued to fall softly on the city. Inside, in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the Riverside district, a father and daughter slept peacefully, their world finally still after a year of chaos. The refrigerator hummed, the heater clicked on, drawings covered the walls, Nia's artwork, bright and hopeful. On the small kitchen table sat 2 plates from their New Year's Eve celebration, evidence of shared time and simple joy. In the bedroom, Nia dreamed of horses and art in the year ahead. In the other bedroom, Darius slept the deep sleep of someone who'd carried a heavy weight for so long and had finally been allowed to set it down. They were home, not in the sense of walls and addresses, but in the sense that mattered. Present for each other. Showing up consistently. Loving through the everyday moments that accumulated into a life. The court had ruled in Darius's favor, but the real victory had come later. In learning to co-parent without combat, in finding financial stability through persistence, in watching Nia adjust and thrive and grow, in discovering that being enough had nothing to do with money or houses or credentials, and everything to do with being there. Morning would come, and with it, Wednesday pancakes with chocolate chip smiley faces. Homework would need to be done, jobs would need to be worked, routines would need to be maintained. The daily unglamorous work of parenting would continue, unremarkable and extraordinary in equal measure. But for now, they rested. A team that had weathered the storm and come out stronger. A father and daughter who'd proven that presence mattered more than prestige. That love could be documented in cheap notebooks and measured in shared meals and sustained through sheer determination not to give up. The story could have ended differently. The judge could have ruled the other way. The financial crisis could have broken them. The custody battle could have destroyed the fragile co-parenting relationship entirely. But it didn't. Because Darius Cole had shown up every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday for 3 years, through fear and doubt and impossible odds. With nothing but love in a composition notebook and the stubborn refusal to let go of what mattered most. And in the end, that had been enough. More than enough. It had been everything